Josh was a teenager whose parents were divorced. His greatest wish was to reunite his family. That dream seemed out of reach until the day Josh arrived home with a newborn baby. 16-year-old Josh sat on his bed, staring nostalgically at a photo on his phone. It showed his mother, Betty, his father, Derek, and himself at a picnic. He longed to turn back time to when his family was happy together. Josh had always dreamed of a large family, but recent events had shattered his small family. His parents' divorce was still fresh, and his father had already moved on with a new woman before the divorce was finalized. Josh had a deep bond with his father and tried to keep their relationship intact. The divorce hit Josh hard, and he missed having both parents around, although their constant fighting had prepared him for the split. "Josh, what are you doing?" Betty asked, entering his room. "Just looking at this old picture of you and Dad. It was a great picnic. I remember being so mad at you guys for eating all the strawberries," Josh said, smiling. "I remember this. It was a different time," Betty said, sitting beside him. "But things are different between your dad and me now. He's changed. It feels like he only cares about himself. I wish things could go back to how they were," Josh said. "Yeah, that's life, Josh. Things change," Betty said, getting up. "Come now, get ready for school." Betty wished her son would understand that his father was not the saint he admired so dearly. Derek was an easy-come, easy-go kind of guy. He liked things easy. So when Betty felt pregnant with Josh, he was upset to lose his freedom to the responsibilities of being a father. Later that week, Josh was scheduled to meet his father's new woman, Sylvia, for the first time. His father had hoped it would help mend the family differences. And while Josh was excited to see his dad, he wasn't particularly happy to meet his new woman. He still hoped for his family to get back together, and Sylvia only got in the way. "Hi, champ," Derek said as he opened the door for Josh. "Hi, Dad," Josh said, entering the small apartment. "So glad you could make it," Derek said as a young woman approached him from the kitchen. He kissed her on the cheek, holding her in his arms. "Josh, I'd like you to finally meet your new mommy, Sylvia," Derek said. Josh instantly felt uncomfortable with the term new mommy, but held his peace. "Sylvia, this is my son, Josh." "Nice to meet you," Sylvia said, shaking Josh's hand. "Nice to meet you too," Josh responded casually. Josh couldn't help but admire Sylvia's beauty. There was something very kind about her face, but she was by no means a match for his mother and could never replace her. Josh, Derek, and Sylvia had an amazing dinner that night. Josh was happy to finally spend a little time with his father. Unfortunately, most of his attention was focused on Sylvia, and he began feeling like a third wheel. However, as the night progressed, Josh began to take a liking to Sylvia. They both shared a love for puzzles and had an amazing time solving one after dinner. Josh and Sylvia even ended up exchanging numbers. When Josh got home later that day, he told his mother about everything that transpired. When Betty heard about the new mommy comment, she immediately lost it. "New mommy?" Betty yelled in shock as she did the dishes. Has Derek completely lost his mind? I think he was just making a joke. "I'll admit it was in poor taste, but don't read too much into it, Mom," Josh said, trying to calm his mom down, who chopped onions in a huff. The comment was clearly a minor detail that would have been better kept to himself. "No, Josh, you can't say things like that," Betty said, banging the pots and pans together. She continued with the dishes in frustration. "Listen, I don't want you going over there anymore," she added. "Mom, that's not fair. You can't just forbid me from seeing my own father," Josh complained. "I can and will. I don't want you contacting or communicating with him either," Betty exclaimed in a huff. Josh knew better than to argue with his mother when she was this angry. He sadly walked off into his room. A few weeks passed, and while Josh still wasn't in communication with his father, he and Sylvia would still text occasionally. Josh's father was often hard to reach, so his new relationship with Sylvia helped him keep tabs on his dad. One day, Josh received a shocking call from Sylvia. "Hi, Josh. I didn't know who else to call," Sylvia whimpered in tears. "Your dad left me, Josh. I told him I was pregnant, and he just stood and left. I don't know what to do," Sylvia cried. "I'm so sorry, Sylvia," Josh simply said. He was only a teenager and had no idea how to handle such a situation. "Please help me, Josh. I'm an immigrant and don't have family here." "I'm all alone," Sylvia pleaded. "I'll try to talk to my mother and see if she can help," Josh said. Josh tried to talk to his mother, but the minute she heard Sylvia's name, she wanted no part in it at all. His mother was his last hope. As a 16-year-old teenager, there was very little Josh could do for the woman. Time flew by, and Josh was still heartbroken over his shattered family life. His father was long gone. His mother had become more hardened, and all warmth and laughter had evaporated away from his home. One evening, Betty was waiting for Josh to come home. They had a lawyer's appointment to get to, and it was already getting late. "Where's this boy?" Betty wondered, frustrated at her 11th call going unanswered. Something was wrong. It was unlike Josh to go AWOL. Betty was on the verge of calling the police when the door finally opened and Josh appeared on the threshold carrying a baby in his arms. "Josh, whose baby is that? Where'd you find the child?" Betty asked. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I couldn't leave him. This is Sylvia's child and my brother," Josh explained. Betty was about to lose it. She couldn't believe her son had blatantly lied to her like that. She picked up her phone and dialed 911, wet as her blood boiled within her. The sight of the little baby in Josh's arms sank her heart. She decided to calm down and hear Josh out. "As you know, Dad left Sylvia after discovering she was pregnant. She's an immigrant with no family here, so she was all alone after he left. The pregnancy and childbirth took a toll on her health, and just a few days after she was discharged after giving birth, she was hospitalized and is in intensive care," Josh explained. "And when do you fall into all this, Josh?" Betty asked, concerned. "That was the only contact Sylvia had at the hospital, as the doctor called me while I was in school and said she needed someone to take care of the baby while Sylvia was in recovery," Josh explained. "You're 16, Josh. What was your plan here?" Betty asked in frustration. "I'm sorry, Mom, but he's family. I had to do something," Josh explained. Betty had to accept that she had to care for the child. She hoped Sylvia would recover soon and take her child back. In the meantime, Betty told Josh he would have to take care of his brother. Josh tried to contact his father, but as soon as he heard about the baby, his father hung up. Josh felt alone in the situation. For the next few days, Josh acted as a babysitter and mother to his brother. He fed, bathed, and put the baby to bed, never letting him out of his sight. Josh waited for news from the hospital that Sylvia had recovered and could take her baby back. When the hospital finally called, it was not the news Josh had hoped for. "Sorry to inform you, but Sylvia passed away today from organ failure," the doctor said over the phone. Josh looked at his motherless brother and feared for his future. The baby would likely be placed in the system and eventually put up for adoption. Josh didn't want his brother to grow up in the system, but he felt he had no other choice. Josh suddenly had a crazy idea. It was a long shot, but his options were limited at this point. "No way, Josh. I'm not going to be the guardian of this child," Betty yelled as her son tried to pitch his idea to her at the dinner table. "Please, Mom. I'll adopt him myself as soon as I'm of age," pleased, Josh pleaded. "No, Josh. I'm sorry. That's just a responsibility none of us are ready for, especially you." "I don't want to talk about this anymore," Betty concluded. The next day, Josh was in tears as he packed his brother's things, preparing to drop him off at the hospital. Betty watched her heartbroken son as he grabbed his brother's bags and strolled to the door in tears. Betty stopped him just as he got to the door. "Wait, Josh, maybe we can give your idea a shot. I mean, he is family after all," Betty said. A few months later, Betty officially became the guardian of Sylvia's child. She even grew to love the child, naming him Andrew after her grandfather. Baby Andrew became a significant part of their family, and they all grew to love him. The addition of Andrew to the family brought Josh the same joy he had experienced before his parents' divorce. When Josh turned 18, he decided to officially become his brother Andrew's legal parent. By then, Josh was engaged, and a few years later, he got married. His wife was happy to be part of Andrew's life and took on a motherly role with Betty's help. One day, while they were all in the park, Derek called Betty. He wanted to apologize for everything and was ready to be a father again after learning about Sylvia's passing. "It's too late, Derek," Betty said, watching Josh, his wife, and Andrew playing. "Andrew already has a loving family. I don't want you to disrupt that. Goodbye."